Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com. NFL Nation covers the Eagles as OTAs continue. And for the first time in a long time, Phil, it sounds like there's a big kumbayage up there at NovaCare Center. Everybody's getting along.
Well, that was certainly the image that was projected yesterday after the practices were over and everybody talked to the media and all. But it also felt legitimate. I mean, it felt sincere. I don't think anybody was overacting or putting on much of a show for us. They wanted to get that message out, I'm sure. But I think if there was any real animosity or any real behind-the-scenes problem there, you might pick up a false note or something in somebody's comments. So they seem legitimate and sincere about everything. And after Bradford talked, he walked back to the locker room for something, and then he was going to go to the cafeteria, I guess, in the Eagles complex. And Wentz was going from the locker room back to the auditorium for his turn to talk to the media. And they walked together, just kind of talking. And I was far enough away that I couldn't hear what they were saying to each other. It wasn't eavesdropping on them or anything. But you see these guys in just a casual moment, and people were around, but they were just talking and laughing about something. And out in the field, they were going to give each other some stuff. If someone made a bad throw or something like that, you could hear a little bit of razzing from the other quarterbacks. It looks and feels like whatever tension there was has been kind of put away, and I really thought that would be the case. I mean, I think when we talked, during the Bradford holdout period there, I mean, he was making a calculated gamble on trying to change the situation, maybe get himself traded to Denver. And once that was over with, and he couldn't get that done, then there was nothing for him but to come back and be the Eagles quarterback as he's being paid to be. And at bottom all of this, I think that these are all, I don't know Daniel that well yet. Not that I know them all that well, but I don't know Daniel. I haven't been around Daniel as much as the other two guys, but they just seem like genuinely decent people, all three of them. They seem like good guys to have around. There's not a lot of ego coming from any of those three quarterbacks at this point. And those are the things that get in the way, really. Money is something that everybody's got to deal with. They're all actually being paid fairly well according to the market rates for their position, so nobody can really complain too much about money. There's no real ego issues, apparently. And in terms of personality, they're all pretty easygoing guys. I think Daniel's a little more of a chippy, competitive guy. Wentz can be that kind of guy, but Bradford's kind of laid back. So I don't really think there's going to be any kind of long-term ramifications of this thing. I think they all put it away when Bradford came back and Wentz was there, and they all just got on with business.
Yeah, as you kind of write over at ESPN.com, Phil, that maybe this crazy arrangement can work after all, and I guess that kind of shows that Bradford, cooler heads have prevailed for him. Do you see him kind of working with Wentz? I mean, it seems like, is there a lot of interaction when they're out on the field? Because Bradford said, look, it's my duty kind of to teach the next guy. Like, he realized, look, I did what I did, but now I'm here, and then, that's what you do. You teach the next guy. Is that something that you're observing?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of that goes on when we're not able to see it. On the field, there's some interaction with quarterbacks or different positions and stuff, but for the most part, coaches are more vocal during practice. You see Daniel say something here and there, point to something, what he's saying or what he's pointing out exactly, but if the guy comes off after his turn, running the offense, and Daniel sees something, he can say, hey, look, this was your read here, or maybe you put it on this way, or something like that. I mean, Daniel knows the offense best out of all the three of them, so you get more sense of Daniel kind of being that guy directing traffic a little bit. But, it was pretty famously well known that in Green Bay, when Aaron Rodgers got there, that Brett Favre did not consider it his job to spend any time helping the guy learn to take his job away from him. And with Bradford, you get more of a sense that it's an adjustment to be, to go from being the number one overall pick in the draft and the guy everybody's focused on trying to develop and bring along and teach and make him do a great quarterback. It's hard to go from that guy to somebody being the other guy, the guy who's helping the kid, and going from the guy who's learning to being the guy who's sort of passing on knowledge. I mean, that's a transition that players have to make at some point in their careers. And Bradford, he's 28, he's been in the league 6 years. I mean, yeah, he's ready to be that guy, and he seems to understand that it's a valuable thing to have. That he had that. He mentioned A.J. Feely as a guy that helped him when he was a rookie. He was a backup quarterback in St. Louis then, and Bradford was the kid that they drafted. And, he's gotten that his whole career from people. And he kind of appreciates getting it, being able to turn it around now and give it to somebody else. So I think he gets it, and he's not going to pull any of those, Brett Favre type games with the rookie. I think it's part of the game. It's part of being part of the game's tradition. You learn from the people before you, and you pass it on to the people who come after you. And I think Bradford gets that.
Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com, NFL Nation. Phil, there was a report over the weekend that Wentz is a little bit more handling the playbook better. Is that something that you could see at this stage of the of where they are? I mean, does it look like Wentz is a guy who has a better grasp? I kind of read that and was thinking to myself, is that something that you could even notice at this stage of the game?
Yeah, I don't think there's much to that, and I say that Matt Lombardo, who wrote the little piece, said that was like an online kind of a gallery of photos and with my observations about the OTAs so far. And all Matt was kind of saying was that, especially in the second one that the media got to see,
right,
Wentz seemed to have a better day, which I actually wrote at the time. Wentz had a better day the second day than the first day, and Bradford was a little bit down in terms of he threw a couple interceptions in that practice, and Wentz had just a little more noticeable in terms of the plays he made. But overall, I don't think you can notice that much in terms of where they really are. B, you don't know. I can see Wentz make a really nice throw to a guy, 20 yards downfield, and that was a good play. But it may be that, he missed two reads that he should have thrown to in his progressions, and the coaches are going to, use that play to teach him how to run the offense better. And you don't always know what they're supposed to be doing, or what you see them do. I mean, one play that Wentz made that stood out last week was, he kind of got tripped up by an offensive lineman backing into him, and he kind of lost his balance a little bit, regained it, kind of turned in an awkward way, and just sort of threw almost sidearmed and sideways out to Trey Burton, who was tight end, who was kind of running a little bit off to the right there. And it was the kind of play where, the pocket collapsed. He was about to go down, and he got the ball out to somebody. And it's the kind of play you see great quarterbacks make. They turn a negative play into a positive play. But it wasn't really a great quarterback play. I mean, it wasn't a great play like where he stepped back and saw what the safety was doing, read it right, made a great throw to a guy for a touchdown. I mean, that's what you're trying to teach the guy to do, not improvise sort of schoolyard type stuff. That looks impressive when you're watching it. But anyway, I think the thing that Matt wrote that got, I think somebody picked it up as a report, that this was a report, and Matt was even laughing about it himself the other day at Novacare. It wasn't really, I didn't mean it as like, a comprehensive report. It was just an observation that, Wentz is looking pretty good. And he is. He's got the arm. He's got a presence about him as a quarterback, which, is an important thing. And it's hard to even describe that in words. Like, when you see it. It's the kind of thing when a guy's out there and he doesn't have any presence and you're just watching him and he's just like, he's lined up a quarterback, but you don't feel like he's in control or anything. That's just a sense you get from watching guys, and you can't really necessarily explain it. You can just recognize it when you see it. Wentz has that. You have that feeling that he's out there and he's running the thing. If he's doing everything right and making all the right reads and the right throws, the coaches know that, and the players will know that at some point. But standing on the sideline as the media, we have no idea about that stuff. So
yeah,
I think it's a little hard to, when you get to training camp and they're in pads and sometimes they're rushing the quarterback and then that might maybe not hitting him, but at least putting pressure on him and making him uncomfortable. Then you start to really get a sense of what guys are all about, and I think it's a little early to even make any conclusions about those guys.
That being said, yesterday seemed like Sam had not the best day. I mean, for a guy in shirts and T-shirts and shorts, it's hard to have a great day, a bad day, but it seemed like yesterday maybe was a day that, he didn't stand out, let's say that. Maybe. I don't know. You were there.
Yeah, he didn't. I mean, he had a couple, he made some good throws. The thing is, he's the quarterback, the starting quarterback, and he's been in the league 6 years. He should make some good throws at OTA. That's not what it's really all about. I mean, you look at him and you're just, watching him, and he made some other throws that weren't so good, and he kind of described it. He said he watched the tape after practice. The coaches and the players watched the tape together, and he came away feeling better than he had after walking off the field. At the time he walked off the field, he didn't feel like he had a great practice, but then when he watched the tape with the coaches, they kind of said, okay, here's what happened here. And, that's what they're there to do, to learn, to get comfortable with the offense, to master the whole scheme and the blocking scheme and the protection assignments and change plays based on the defense and all that. That's the stuff that they're learning now. And that stuff is really important as they absorb it and are able to kind of spit it back out again and, make the right calls in the right situations. And that's what they're working on now. And, whether you're moving the ball down the field against a, second-team defense or not in shorts where nobody can rush you and hit you, I mean, that's really not what they're basing their judgments on as they're doing this part of the year. This part of the year is about learning it all, getting everybody on the same page, getting a feel for each other and all that kind of stuff. And, it seems to me that, I thought yesterday Daniel had the best of the three quarterbacks. Just because he made a couple throws that were just, go a little harder, a little more, on the money when he had to get something to a tighter window or whatever. I thought Wentz had a fine day too, but I thought Bradford was a little up and down. There were a couple of pick balls that either intercepted or could have been intercepted. You go by that kind of stuff and you go, well, he didn't have the best day, but I thought it was Daniel, then Wentz, and Bradford yesterday. I thought last week it was Wentz, then Bradford, then Daniel, and then the first one we saw, I thought it was Bradford first, then Wentz, and then Daniel. So, I kind of do that every year, which each of these, I kind of, evaluate everything I see, and based on what, with the limited understanding that I have of what exactly they're doing and what I'm seeing, I kind of make some conclusions based on what I do know and, what I've seen over the years. So, I'm not sure I'm 100% right on everything I do or everything I see, but, it's generally a feel thing. I do think that Bradford didn't have his best day yesterday, but he was, he made some throws that were really good. He just made a couple that were, not so good and would be interceptions or the kind of, the kind of throws that get you into trouble in the game.
Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com's NFL Nation covering the Eagles. And then there's Jeffrey Lurie's comments about the quarterbacks, about their philosophy and, why they did it. He made comments to mmqb.com. What was your take on the explanation from the Eagles owner on his quarterback or their quarterback philosophy? Maybe it's his quarterback philosophy. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it starts with him. I really do. I think that, even last year when we saw him at the owners' meetings and, they had just acquired Bradford in the trade and traded Foles away, and this was long before Wentz or any of that stuff. But even at that point, he was asked about the Bradford trade and why they did it and what they were thinking. And he basically said, he's been an owner for like 20 years at this point. And, looking around, if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. And if you don't have that quarterback, you're not going to win anything, and you're just going through the motions. And, the trade for Bradford was an attempt to get a guy that people thought was the number one pick in the 2010 draft. There's a guy, Heisman Trophy winning guy people, around the league thought could be a franchise quarterback, Super Bowl caliber quarterback. And so Lurie made it very clear that's his philosophy at this point. It's all about getting. Howie Roseman has talked about, getting out the year he had off when Chip Kelly was running everything, and how he was kind of talking to people and observing things and trying to learn more about, some fresh ideas things. And what his big takeaway was, you have to have a quarterback. Now, I don't know if you needed a year off to figure that out. So I think Howie had a pretty good idea about that before his year off. But that was the thing he took away from that, was that quarterbacks are, the whole thing. So what they did this offseason was clearly do everything they could to get some guys, get as many arrows in the quiver as they could and find if they could hit the bullseye with one of them. And that's the plan. Now, I also think Lurie's comments made it sound like much more of a well-established, well-thought-out plan, whereas in reality, when they re-signed Bradford back in the beginning of March, they had the 13th pick in the draft and had no idea whether they could move up or not. So when they signed Bradford, that was the best thing that they could do for their team as far as having a quarterback, was sign Sam Bradford and bring him back. But they did a 2-year deal with him, which shows you that they were thinking about, something else down the line, and that getting a quarterback in the draft was something they were hoping to do, but they didn't know for sure. So they had to give Bradford market contracts for 2 years, and they did. And then they brought Daniel in, which is pretty well above a market quarterback contract for a backup. And if he's going to be a number 3 quarterback at some point, then it's really a big contract. For him, with 3 years, $21 million. That's a lot for that particular position. But again, at that time, they didn't know they could get up as high in the draft as they got. They took a series of 3 trades to get all the way up from 13 to 8, and then finally up to number 2. So, they did things as they were kind of improvising as they went along. I mean, but the overall plan was clearly to get a quarterback at some point in the draft, whether it was a guy, at the very top like they did, or if they had to settle for a guy who was going to be a 3rd or 4th round guy. They didn't know for sure at that point, but they were going to try to get a guy to work with and bring along. So that was the plan, was to have Bradford, Daniel, and a rookie. When it turned out to be the number 2 pick and a guy that, you're investing a lot in, that guy is pretty much going to be your quarterback at some point. So I think the plan had to be, flexible and it had to change. I don't think it was the master plan that Lurie kind of made it sound like. But I can see why you'd want to make it sound that way. You're trying to, the overall plan though was to get a lot of quarterbacks, get guys and bring them in here and have them coach. Carson, who was an NFL quarterback, Frank Reich, who was an NFL quarterback, and John DeFilippo is the quarterbacks coach and was not a player in the league, but has worked with quarterbacks in the past and is a good guy in that role of the position coach who has to do a lot more of the day-to-day, hands-on, fundamental stuff. And so anyway, surrounding good young quarterbacks with good quarterback teaching is the plan. And we'll see if it works. If you have the right people, you can only find out when they actually play games. And we won't know for sure about Wentz probably 3 years or so. And even they, won't know for sure, but we'll have a better feeling for Wentz in a year or two, and then maybe 3 years. But the plan was to we haven't had a quarterback since McNabb, and we have to get one if we're going to win anything. That was really the plan, and that's what they did.
Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com, NFL Nation, covers the Eagles. And I want to get your thoughts. Walter Thurman retired the other day. I mean, maybe it wasn't a surprise, because there were some people that had mentioned that. But I think it's just another example of this game and guys leaving early. I mean, you got a chance to be around him last year. He had his best year by some accounts. I mean, he had a really good year last year. He's 28 years old. I don't know how much dealings you had with Thurman, but to hear that a guy 28 basically walking out at the top, how surprising that is. And are you surprised to hear that this particular player retired after being around him and seeing the season he had last year?
Yeah, a little bit surprised, I would say. I mean, there was kind of some talk floating around at the end of the year that he might just move on. He had opened a film company, and the idea was that he wanted to make movies, he wanted to direct films and stuff like that. Now, that's an expensive proposition, and it's a lot easier to do if you have a lot more money. And Thurman was a kind of a mid-round draft pick by Seattle back when he first came into the league, so he didn't make a ton of money in Seattle for the first 4 years. But he's made like $6.25 million, I think, the last 2 years with the Giants and Eagles. And if you get that kind of money and you invest it or put it somewhere where you can live off it for a week, that can take you a pretty long way in life. And he's had some injuries, and everybody talks about the concussion thing and whether that's affecting guys' decision making. I don't know exactly what played into it. With Thurman, I think it was a little bit of he's really passionate about this idea of making films, and he's started a company to try to produce movies, and he wants to get really focused on that. And it's hard to do that and be a full-time NFL player. So if that's where his passion really is, and he's got money that he can play with and try to make it happen, I can understand if you're not really motivated to be a football player. It takes a lot of commitment and a lot of physical sacrifice, let's say, and a lot of physical pain at times to be an NFL player. And they get paid a lot of money. Nobody's whining for it. I'm just saying, if you don't have to do it, and you're not really into it as much as some guys are. Some guys just love the game and want to play it as long as they can. If you're not that kind of guy, you're not wired that way. I can see where this could happen, but I didn't really see that in Thurman. He seemed like he was really enjoying himself for most of last season. And the fact that it kind of ended badly, and I don't think anybody was having a lot of fun by the end of the year. That could have factored in a little bit. He was hurt the year before with the Giants. Before that, he won the Super Bowl in Seattle, so he's been there too. So, it's just a different kind of guy, and I can respect him having a different, choice than a lot of players have. But you also suspect he's a guy that a year or two could be kind of thinking, I'm not sure all that money's going to last that long, and maybe a year or two back in the NFL wouldn't be such a bad idea. So I wouldn't be surprised if he unretires at some point either. But everybody's a little different, and Thurman certainly was.
Meanwhile, all of us listening are wondering, how can you go through $5 million that quickly and have to go back to work? Phil Sheridan is with us. Phil, I'm really interested on the running back situation. There's a lot of spots on this team that have a lot of interesting battles, but I think running back is really interesting because Sproles isn't here. Matthews had been sick. I guess he's back, but we know his health is an issue. Smallwood's a rookie. What does that position look like thus far? Are they depending on Smallwood to be a big part of this offense?
Yeah, I think as it stands now, they would be depending on him. And, we don't know until we see, a little more than what we're seeing now, whether he can be that kind of guy or not. He seems to be talented. He seems to, have that, that speed and that kind of burst that you see in good NFL running back. So you see some signs from him that he he can be a decent player, but they have a lot riding on what Sproles is up to, and I think that nobody's really clear about that 100%. Next week's the mandatory camp, and if Sproles doesn't come to that, he's going to be fined, and that's going to be more of a statement that there's more to this than just want to spend a little time with his family. That's been the spin so far. Sproles hasn't said or done anything to counter that or correct that impression. So if that's all it is, and he's just a 33-year-old guy feeling like he doesn't need to be in a camp like this to get his body right. That's possible, and I'll be okay, I think. But yeah, with Matthews being injury prone and Sproles not being the biggest guy or a 25 carry a game kind of back, then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they pick somebody up, during camp or when roster cuts come. There's a few teams that have a little bit of depth at running back. Maybe one of those guys gets cut. I always thought that Chris Polk, who was the guy that was with the Eagles a few years ago, he's on the street. He's a free agent, and I think he's still unsigned. I mean, a guy like that would make some sense too. Just to have the depth and have the options. If Ryan Matthews gets hurt the first week in training camp, for example, and is going to be out for a couple of weeks, you're really going to be very, very thin at running back. And at that point, I think you're going to wish you had maybe brought in another body or two.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on that running back situation. I think there's a lot of really interesting situations that we'll get more into next week when they have the mandatories. We'll see. Real quick, Phil, your intuition, does Fletcher Cox show up next week?
I think so. Yeah, I think he will. I mean, knowing Fletcher a little bit and having seen him around and kind of how he conducts himself and what his general, sort of personality is, I think this has been hard for him. I think he's doing what, he and his agent think is the right way to play a situation like this. But I think the team really is, I would say in good faith, negotiating or trying to work something out with him. I don't think it's a situation where the team's like, we got you for another year and you're stuck and we'll franchise tag you if you don't like it. I mean, I don't think that's how they're handling this. All they said publicly is, he's our guy. We want him here. He's going to be here for a long time, Everything they say publicly, I think, is probably the tone of the negotiation. So I would imagine that there's not a lot of, bitterness or acrimony. It's just if you're Fletcher Cox and your agent says, look, if you go to, OTAs and you blow a knee or something like that, then, it's just not going to do you any good. So, but when it's mandatory and, it's really about the team and getting together and, creating chemistry and developing those bonds that teams have to have, I think that part of it will be important enough to him that he will be there. I would be surprised, but, we've all seen it go the other way. So, I mean, I won't be 100% shocked. But even last year, Evan Mathis, he was coming to the mandatory camp when Chip Kelly released him before he could get there. So, even guys who, make the decision to skip the OTAs, it's voluntary. Nobody can really get mad at them about it. Coaches may not like it, but you can't cut a guy because he didn't come to a voluntary workout, and you can't fine him for not coming to a voluntary workout. So I think he's made his point. He's only, makes sense at this point, but I think that knowing him as the kind of guy he is, the kind of team guy that he is, my guess is he'll be there.
Phil Sheridan has more on the Eagles OTAs over at ESPN.com, NFL Nation, and we will look forward to the start of the mandatories next week and see if Fletcher Cox is there. Sproles as well are two of the guys that are still out. And do you know if Sayamala will be there? Will he be done school by next week or no?
I believe so. My understanding was he would miss the OTAs, but should be there by the mandatory camp. I'm not 100% sure on their academic schedule out there, but my sense was that he would have to miss all the OTA stuff, but should be there for the 3-day camp. Now that Doug Peterson said they were sending them stuff and keeping them up to date on what they're doing, giving them stuff to learn and study and all that, but. That's a tough rule. The whole Pac-12 thing where their academic schedule doesn't allow rookies, it affects a bunch of guys, and it's affected other Eagles in the past. I think Zach Ertz had to get through it, and I think even Nelson Aguilar last year had some of that too. And it's college is supposed to prepare you for life and a career, and it's understandable you don't want to ruin people's academic careers because of their athletic pursuits, but by the time the guy's a senior and he's got a job in the NFL, I don't think you're helping a guy's career that much or his preparation for real life if you just don't let him, attend camps that are going to affect his ability to make the team and actually earn a living. So, it seems like there's a little bit of a problem there. And when it's only like one or two conferences or schools or that have that kind of schedule, it seems like it's probably something that could be fixed if some people just got their heads turned around a little bit.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that as well. Phil Sheridan, everybody, at Sheridan Scribe on Twitter. Thanks, pal.
Yeah, appreciate it.